Okay, so let's shift from voluntary consent into third-party rights. Um, and so up to this point, we've talked about contracts as between two parties. All right, either a buyer and a seller, or someone providing a service and someone paying for a service. Um, well, under certain circumstances, third parties can enter into the contracts after the agreement's already been made. So let's reference that. So the two most common are are actions that do this are delegation, which is transferring of duties, and assignment, which is the transferring of rights to another. All right. So when we think of an assignment, you're transferring the rights under a contract. All right. And so an example here, if all that's left is the payment of money, right? So let's say I'm Larry the landscaper and I've cut your grass. You owe me $50, but I also owe my friend $50, and I instruct you to pay the $50 you owe me to my friend. Well, that's an assignment. All right, I've assigned the right to collect payment to a third party. All right, and the default rule for assignments is that's legal. You can do that. I can tell you to pay my friend, and you're legally obligated to do so, unless one of these four circumstances is present. So unless it's illegal to do so, that means prohibited by statute. Contract is personal in nature, which I've got an example of we'll look at momentarily. It really makes things more difficult or more risky for the obligor, which is in the example I'm laying out for you, to pay somebody else. If it's significantly more difficult, then it wouldn't be a valid assignment. Or if in our initial contractual agreement we agreed that there would be no assignments necessary, and in some cases that wouldn't even be valid, because in most states, if all that's being assigned is the payment of money, that can always be assigned. All right, even if the contract says that it can't. All right. Okay, let's move on. Delegations. We'll talk briefly about that. This is extremely common in construction. There's a good chance as you view this, you're either in the new lender building or you were at some point in time recently. All right, so the new lender business building. So the University of Cincinnati contracted with the general contractor for the construction of the building. All right. And obviously the general contractor doesn't do all of the work. All right. There's a lot of stuff that is subcontracted out. For instance, the electrical work is commonly subcontracted out to electricians. Plumbing, contracted out to expert plumbers. All right, general contractor's job really is to manage the overall construction and progress of the project. All right, and so the contract to have the building built was between UC and the general contractor, the lead contractor. All right, there were several other contractors who worked on the building, and they were delegated that responsibility, right? Because the responsibility for the building and everything that it took to get it ready to go was the responsibility of the general contractor. All right. So in that example, the general contractor delegates the duties to subcontractors, right? The subcontractors are delegatees. Now, the thing about delegation is that the original contracting party, in the example that I was using with UC, the general contractor is responsible for all of the work done by subcontractors who were delegated work to do. If the subcontractor doesn't perform, then the general contractor is still responsible. If something goes wrong, UC could sue the general contractor. Okay, so general rule, you can delegate unless special trust has been placed in the obligor. All right. Performance depends on personal skill or talents. So here's an extreme example. LeBron James could not delegate his contractual duties to me because his contract with the Los Angeles Lakers is based on his personal skill and talent. All right. If the delegation to a third party will vary materially from that which was expected. All right, and I've got a few examples that we'll use to illustrate this in just a moment. And also when the contract prohibits it. All right. If the initial agreement between the parties prohibits delegation, then you wouldn't be able to delegate. Okay. Third-party beneficiaries. All right, so a third-party beneficiary is a party who tends to benefit from the contract, but was not an original contracting party. All right, and so when we have third-party beneficiaries, we need to define put them into one of two categories. All right, the first is an intended third-party beneficiary, and the second is well, actually, it's on the next slide. So we'll get to that. But the first is an intended beneficiary. And an intended third-party beneficiary has rights as if they were a contracted party. All right? If they were one of the parties to the original